Welcome to the Friday Casebook. Hi, Roger. Good to see you in 2021.
Good to see you. How are you? And hello to all our audience and our community. This is the first show. Let me say Happy New Year, Bon Anno, Bon Année, Fröhliches Neues Jahr. That's about as far as I can go.
Even in German, that's...
Yeah, you didn't know I spoke German. That's a nice surprise.
This week was quite terrible, to be honest. Our eyes were on Washington, D.C.
Eyes of the world have been watching in disbelief what has happened in Washington, and I feel very, very sad about that. I don't feel particularly surprised because I think a lot of people predicted something like this happening, and things have been getting worse and worse for a long time. But it was really deeply shocking to witness it. In fact, I've been inside that building. I've worked with members of Congress when I was a member of Parliament. I know how seriously they take their duty as representatives of the people in the United States. And to see that building, which in a way is a kind of icon of democracy across the whole world, breached so quickly and in that way was absolutely shocking. The BBC interviewed Jim Luscalzo, who was one of the Capitol Hill photographers who was on hand when this happened. Here he is giving an interview at about 2:15. I heard a commotion. Sounds like the poem The Night Before Christmas, with Father Christmas coming down the chimney, but this wasn't Father Christmas coming down the chimney. This was the zombie version of The Night Before Christmas about to occur. I want to show you this Confederate flag because that tells us so much. I think we've all seen this image, and that's what that is. And let's remember the Confederates were believed in ownership of slaves, so it's hardly a symbol of human rights in the 21st century. But this is what a lot of protesters identify with, and just as they obviously have no sense of an identification with human rights, they obviously still believe in slavery, oppression of black people. They don't believe in the rule of law either. That's pretty obvious. This man, who we've seen a lot of pictures of, is rather lucky to still be alive, I think. And let's remember that police officers also lost his life, as well as the 4 protesters who were killed. And obviously there's a lot of tension on what he looks like, but let's imagine what's going on inside this man's head. Because these people seem to genuinely believe that, Biden is a kind of communist Satanist. They may think that Pence is a communist Satanist pedophile, that the election has been stolen. They genuinely believe this. In other words, this is what is motivating them to take these actions, is this complete delusion and disconnect from reality. And it's frightening that people should have such thoughts in their head that can lead them to take this kind of action. And it's really shocking that there was nobody there to stop them from doing what they did. Mm. Even getting to the point of invading the office of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. Again, nobody there to stop them doing what they did. And of course, it's got Trump's name written all over it, and there they are running amok. And again, it is extraordinary that there is such a lack of police presence. Again, when this was predictable that there might be some serious rioting and disruption around this time. One needs to contrast that with what happened after the death of George Floyd last summer and the Black Lives Matter protests, where, as we remember, the police presence was very strong. So this is what happens when white people riot in America, and this is what happens when black people riot in America. And I think people can draw their own conclusions.
Yeah, this is an issue many people raised this week, so I'm glad you bring this up. In your opinion, what do you think were the Trump supporters' intentions?
I think that is, for me, one of the most shocking things of all. That clearly their intentions were to prevent the confirmation hearings in Congress that were necessary for Biden, who won the election, to be confirmed as the next president. In other words, they wanted to snuff out American democracy. So I think the word fascist is not out of place.
Roger, both of us, we are now in Europe, so it could seem far away what's happening in Washington, D.C., but actually it's not that far away.
The grip of a global pandemic, a global virus, but the threat to our democracies across the world is equally dangerous and equally universal. And one only needs to remember that Donald Trump, for example, has plenty of friends in Europe, some of them rather prominent. Let's remind ourselves of who some of them are. So I don't know if there's anybody in this picture that you might recognize, Lena, or our viewers might recognize. We should remember how friendly Donald Trump is with Nigel Farage. But he's not the only one in Europe.
Marine Le Pen.
Took Marine Le Pen a long time to condemn what was happening in Washington and condemn Donald Trump. And there she is with her buddy from Italy, Matteo Salvini. It's surprising how well networked some of these anti-Europeans are. They seem to have a lot of friends in Europe and a lot of friends across the world with the same mindset, which is intent, as we've seen this week in Washington, on undermining, if not destroying, our democracy. Our kings of the naughty step in Europe in 2020 were looking to defend their title in 2021. The prime ministers of Hungary and Poland, and they're off to a flying start, as we'll hear about in a moment. Again, it's the same mindset, very authoritarian and anti-democratic. And when it comes to it, ready to break the rule of law in order to retain power.
Speaking of Poland, what is happening there right now?
In Poland, we know that there are lots of people, lots of citizens, lots of civil rights movements and so on, protesting against the government's decision to interfere with the rule of law by interfering with the way in which the courts operate. And they're already openly talking in Poland of the replacement of all the judges, of reorganizing the court system in Poland, so that all 10,000 judges in Poland would need to more or less reapply, be verified again, and appointed to new courts, reappointed to the new court system. So that gives them the government the opportunity effectively to vet all 10,000 Polish judges again. And some of them will be sent to courts a long way from where they live. They might decide to take early retirement. Those of them, such as Monika Frakowiak, who we have interviewed previously as New Europeans, who you've interviewed, Lena, will take a stand, and they will be subject to increasing pressure, repression, and disciplinary procedures. And the European Court of Justice is going to be very challenged this year to stand up to what's happening in Poland. And I think it's not something where we can, as Europeans, walk by on the other side. We have to realize that the future of our democracy in Europe is at stake. We have to stand in the way of this. We have to, as citizens, engage and say to our representatives, what is happening in Poland is not acceptable, and we need to stop it in the name of Europe, in the name of human rights, in the name of rule of law in Europe.
How's the start of the vaccine going?
That is the ray of hope on the horizon, of course, that we can get everybody vaccinated. And it's going to take years for things to get back to normal if they ever do. But it is important that the vaccination programs get off to a good start. And they are off to a good start in states like Germany, where 200,000 people were vaccinated in the first week of the program. But rather surprisingly, in France, in the first week of the program, only 500 people had been vaccinated, and here is one of them. But the rollout program is going very slowly in France. More than half the population of France, according to opinion polls, are unwilling to be vaccinated. Now, that might change if you perhaps offered a glass of wine and offered to vaccinate them in a cafe rather than in a hospital. But nevertheless, it's a very, very high number. And that is concerning. And it can't be because they're all sort of conspiracy theorists or people who don't believe in vaccines or have bad experiences with vaccines, although there have been challenges with the vaccine programs previously in France have not gone terribly well. That's part of the story. But I think there's also a general reluctance to trust direction from central government, and in particular from the current government and president. And it's another example of how you really need to have the consent of citizens to make sure that public policy, in this case, something that's protecting the public's health, is going to work. I think that's something that we need to think about. You know, even when it comes to something like a vaccination program, the consent of citizens, I think that's about consultation. I think it's about involving municipalities and local representatives and so on in the rollout program, making sure that citizens' voices are heard, that their concerns are listened to, that they're taken on board, that this program is something that we do together, is rolled out with the consent of citizens and the involvement of municipalities rather than just from a central directive in a rather technocratic way. There's a lesson there, because if you do it the wrong way, it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, it slows down the recovery. More people will lose their lives. It will take longer to get life back to normal, to get the economy going again. And so, you know, all of us have a responsibility, yes, to look after our health, but also to make sure that we see ourselves as citizens, not just passive recipients of government policy, but also those who can shape it. So I hope that the vaccine program in France can be speeded up, because of course not just French citizens will be affected if it carries on being so slow. It'll be all of us in Europe. The recovery will take longer. But I don't think you can just expect in the 21st century citizens to do what you expect of them or what you tell them to do from centrally. They've got ideas of their own, and I think we need to have conversations, we need to involve people, we need to consult the public, we need to move forwards together.
Apart from COVID-19, what caught your eye this week?
I think as it's the start of the year, Lena, we need to look through the crisis of the moment, deep as it is, and remember that you know, there is a plan. Europe has a recovery plan. Europe has the idea of using the recovery plan to promote a more digital economy, a more dynamic economy, a green economy, sustainability in Europe. And these will be the priorities of the Portuguese presidency of the European Union, which has just started. And this is the Portuguese Prime Minister, Antonio Costa. And he also wants to put an emphasis not just on a green and a dynamic and a healthy recovery, but also on an equitable recovery. So use the recovery funds to promote social justice. And I think that's an important message, because Portugal recovered very well after the last major recession, after the financial crisis. And it did it by focusing very much on social programs, public investment, and making sure that nobody was left behind. You need to invest in social programs now. You need to make sure that the economy is equitable and fair.
The new year has just begun. What are your hopes for 2021?
Well, Lena, my biggest hope is that I'll be able to get out more, that I will be able to have a walk, that I'll be able to go on my bicycle, that I'll be able to actually see my friends. My biggest hope is that at some point life will get back to normal, and for me and for everybody else.
The question is if this what's happening right now is the new normal, but yeah, let's hope for the best. Apart from that, what are the standout events for the upcoming week?
Well, with Europeans, we've got some very exciting events coming up over the next few weeks. We've got the Citizens Take Over Europe event next week. We also have the next in our series of talks on the future of Europe. We have a presentation by Agnieszka Weiner, who is based in Ottawa in Canada, about the value of European citizenship in a global context. And we're looking forward to the Tuesday conversations with Paul Henningsen, starting up again on Tuesday, the 9th of February. And as it's the start of the year, perhaps I can also make a plug to say to people, join a pro-European organization, join New Europeans, take responsibility for what happens next in Europe.
Great. See you in a week, Roger. And yeah, have a good weekend, everyone.
Happy New Year.